Hey, everybody, welcome. Come on in. Good to see you all here today. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes. Great to have you all here today. We'll get started shortly. Thank you so much for joining. Great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining. We are going to be looking ahead to immigration in 2025. And I'll give you, maybe you can hear a little bit of music, but we'll be getting started in just a couple minutes. And if you do have any questions, I invite you to put them in the Q&A panel now, and that will help us make sure we have enough time to cover everything for everybody today. Alrighty. Okay. All right. Well, I think we have most people here. So thank you so much for joining. This is Looking Ahead to Immigration in 2025. I'm your host, Sophie Alcorn, and please note that this presentation is an educational service by Alcorn Immigration Law. All information discussed should not be construed as legal advice for any specific action and is an overview only. Please do be sure to consult a knowledgeable professional for assistance with any particular legal issues. So thank you so much for joining. My name is Sophie Alcorn, and our mission at Alcorn Immigration Law is to overcome borders, expand opportunity, and connect the world by practicing compassionate, creative, and cutting-edge immigration law in service of the betterment of humanity. I'm also the host of the Sophie Alcorn podcast. I wrote a column for TechCrunch for over 4 years. I meditate, I'm a mom, and I believe that the world should be a place where every human has the opportunity to self-actualize and go to the places where they are able to work at their highest potential and be in their flow state. And I believe that will make the world a better place for us all. My team at Alcorn Immigration Law is composed of attorneys and other professionals, and we help hundreds of clients at a time. We've helped over 4,000 people since I started Alcorn Immigration Law 9 years ago. We're a remote distributed team of professionals across the United States. I'm personally based in Palo Alto, California, in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we've helped clients from all over the world, over 100 countries, to come to the United States and find ways to legally live here and work here and get visas and green cards. So it's been a joy. I started the firm, as I mentioned, 9 years ago, was right before Trump got elected the first time. So been here before and have a lot to share that hopefully will be helpful to all of you today. Okay, so to dive right into it, I am going to dive right in, but I do also want to mention for people who are just joining, because I see that more folks are coming in as we speak, questions in the Q&A panel. I will try to answer as many as possible by the end of the webinar. This webinar is being recorded. You should use the anonymous attendee designation for your questions in the chat, in the Q&A panel, so they remain confidential. And what else? Everybody who registered will get a copy of the recording. And of course, if you have, personal specific immigration questions, you're always welcome to reach out to us at Alcorn Immigration Law for a consultation. So yeah, that is what I need to cover initially. Okay, But let's dive into it. So there's a lot to cover. There's a lot of possible changes on the horizon. We're going to be covering the global race for talent, challenges in the technology industry, potential policy shifts, immigration trends, various challenges and opportunities, and preparing for 2025 and beyond. And I can also talk a little bit about the brand new H-1B regulation that dropped yesterday. That's going to be effective before the end of the Biden administration. Happy to, talk about anything else that's on people's minds as well. Okay, so when we look at the changing landscape of high-skilled immigration, there are a lot of interesting factors at play, examining the state of things. So in terms of job creation and economic growth, we definitely want more immigration, because when we increase when we increase any immigration, but especially when we increase high-skilled immigration, it results in overall job creation in the United States and economic growth across the country. That includes direct job creation. We work a lot with founders and entrepreneurs. So the businesses that our clients directly create brand new jobs in the United States for Americans all the time. So that's always wonderful to see, but also indirectly throughout the economy, there's, more taxes paid, there's local businesses that get revenue from increased demand. So definitely immigration causes economic growth. And the statistics prove that out. Immigrant innovators have founded almost half of America's Fortune 500 companies, which employ over 14 million people. And there's another related statistic, which is most of the unicorn startups have at least one, if not several, immigrant founders. So these trends are recurring time and time again. It's also interesting examining intellectual property and patent production. So despite being only 16% of inventors in the US in 2018, immigrants were responsible for 23% of patent production and for 25% of the aggregated economic value created by patents. So immigrants as a whole are more likely to invent new things, and the things that you all are inventing are more valuable. So that's pretty cool. So as we can see, obviously, immigration is super important for American dynamism, for national security, for economic viability, for many, many, many reasons, at a systemic level, in addition to, why you as a particular immigrant might want to set up your life in the US, like increased opportunity, ability to have peace of mind, freedom, and security, be able to buy a home, raise your children here, have them go to school here. Of course, all of the personal is very important in all of this as well. So what is the current state of skilled immigration? Well, H-1Bs have been going through some changes in recent years. Really, for the last decade, we've had a lot of scrutiny on the H-1B program. Even today in Hacker News, there's a trending topic right now on H-1B with the new regulations, and people have different policy arguments in there about what should the program be. But the fact is, we have an H-1B program. We've had it for many decades. It's a law that allows people doing what is called specialty occupations, which are generally defined as professional types of jobs, to be able to get petitioned for by US companies that want to sponsor them for their employment. And every year there's an H-1B lottery, and that's coming up again. We're in H-1B lottery season. So if any of you are helping companies who want to sponsor folks for H-1B, now is definitely the time to start reaching out to us. Our prices for the H-1B lottery are lower right now through the end of the year. Our standard rates will kick in January, and then our last minute rates kick in closer to the actual lottery itself at the end of February or early March as those dates get introduced. But what we saw was because of all of the scrutiny into the program, it's been run differently. So in addition to becoming digitized in the last several years since the prior Trump administration, now the system is one person, one chance. And this led to a 38.6% drop in eligible registrations. And in the most recent lottery, there was about a 25% selection rate if you look across all categories. But it's typically higher. It's more like 30% when it comes to people with advanced degrees from US colleges and universities. So a lot of our clients have master's degrees from the US in a STEM field, so they would have a slightly higher chance at being picked in the H-1B lottery. Because I believe because this is a more fair system now, we are seeing more employers who are submitting registrations. So that rose very slightly to 52,700. So on average, about one company is putting in about 2 people on average. But in reality, there's a few companies that put in tons of people and then many companies that just put in one person. And so this is all a reflection of increased focus on compliance for USCIS to, sustain the integrity of the H-1B selection process. We're also seeing a trend for STEM graduates, especially in these breakthrough fields. So AI, biotech, advanced materials, quantum computing, aerospace. We see so many cool technologies that our clients are working on. But there's growing demand for people in these fields, and this extends across the industries, across educational institutions, and even into government. In the last weeks also, in addition to the new H-1B regulation, there's been a change to the J-1 program. And I'll try to make this as simple as possible. A J-1 is an exchange visa for foreign graduates or professionals to come get training and skills in the United States. And it used to be that if a country if another country told the US, hey, we want our people to come back with their knowledge, that the US State Department would make them go home for 2 years at the end of their learning program and not allow them to get visas, several other types of visas or green cards, until they had spent 2 years in their home country. But that list of countries had not been updated in over a decade, and the US was deferring to the foreign countries to make the determination about whether they needed their graduates back. So they just gutted that system and replaced it with a more fair analytical system where the US State Department gets to decide where there are skill shortages around the world and who we're going to send back home. As a result, several countries were removed from the list. So India and China, notably, no longer are considered to have worker shortages that necessitate their J-1 folks returning home for 2 years. So that's an improvement for those people who came in those programs who no longer have to move back directly in a large amount of cases, and who can now proceed with H-1Bs and green cards. So a lot of things are shifting all the time. And then, to set the stage, we're also in a global race for talent. So all of these factors are affecting these twilight days of the Biden administration, as well as what we might expect in the Trump 2.0 administration. So just comparing to where we are, based on our neighbor, Canada, and another AI leader, China. So, Canada is aggressively trying to attract talent. They have open work permits trying to take H-1B holders out of the US. They have a digital nomad program along with 38 other countries. So their new tech talent strategy has been recruiting a lot of global talent to Canada. China is producing way more STEM graduates than we are. We're probably, the United States will produce 40,000 STEM PhDs a year by next year. China is producing 77,000. So a lot more folks in with graduate level advanced degrees, doctors of philosophy in the STEM fields in China. So it's very important for the United States as a country to act now to remain competitive. We seriously, I mean, this is my personal belief about what the coming administration and what any administration should do, but we need to definitely fix our high-skilled immigration program so that we can attract and retain the world's top talent. We want the next Google, Apple, Tesla, SpaceX to be founded in the United States. And in addition to that, we're seeing, lots of tech industry changes that are going to be causing potential policy shifts as we look ahead towards the Trump 2.0 administration. So we still have a STEM worker shortage, projecting 1.4 million technicians, computer scientists, and engineers being needed in the next 5 years. The manufacturing sector as well has 750,000 unfilled jobs despite low unemployment rates. So definitely we need more access to STEM talent. It's also affecting critical sectors. So AI, semiconductors, defense, these fields are definitely affected by STEM talent shortages. And for example, the US needs to keep pace with AI advancements, and we need to be able to follow through with the CHIPS and Science Act and create all the semiconductor manufacturing capabilities in this country. And even the defense sector is having a hard time hiring. So all of this is affecting our security, our economic prosperity, and global prominence. But we are here to help companies and immigrants come to the United States and find ways to live and work here legally so that you can contribute in these fields, regardless of what country you're from. So let's move ahead now and shift and talk about potential policy changes in the coming Trump administration. Now, I'm in Silicon Valley. I'm not working with the administration. I don't have any inside knowledge. So this is based on research and what I'm reading and what I'm hearing about in immigration circles, as well as my best guesses based on having lived and practiced and built a law firm in the first Trump administration about what we might be expecting. Some of this comes from rhetoric on the campaign trail. Some of this comes from people who are joining the administration and what they've spoken about or written about in the past. Some of it is definitely speculation, and some of it is also it's easy to think like, oh, Trump is going to do this or Trump is going to do that. But in the reality, the federal government is a massive bureaucracy full of many departments and many stakeholders, and people holding different offices and different roles. And so there are very differing views within the Republican Party and within the people who are joining the administration about what they want immigration to be in the future. So it's not like there's just the party line and that's what everybody's doing. We're seeing some ruptures and potential conflicts emerge. So with a lot of these things, there's differing viewpoints, and one is probably going to win out over the other, or there might be a standstill. So a lot of this will take time to play out as well. Okay, so H-1Bs. So in the last 24 hours, we had a new regulation released about the H-1B modernization program. We're going to be sending out newsletter with more details on this, social media posts, all of that. Some of the key changes that are going to take effect in the next 30 days, so the rule will become final before the start of the next administration on January 20th, I believe. They're extending cap gap for people who are on their last year of OPT or STEM OPT. And so that's going to be better for folks who get selected in next year's H-1B lottery. Their cap gap is not going to end on October 1st. It's actually going to end on April 1st. So if you don't pay for premium processing, or if there's an RFE, or if for whatever reason maybe you get selected in a later subsequent lottery throughout the year, for any of those reasons, sometimes in the past, international students have had their work authorization run out before their H-1B kicks in. But now across the board, they're extending cap gap till April 1st. So that's going to make that program a lot more accessible. There's also a new definition of what constitutes a specialty occupation. And so that's going to be very valuable for you, the beneficiaries, and for your employers to have more predictability and clarity on what counts as an H-1B job. It's also going to help lawyers have stronger tools to prevent some of the attacks on different occupations that happened in the first Trump administration, because that definition is now clear. It can't be changed without going through the regulatory process again. So there's going to be more clarity and predictability on H-1B adjudication throughout this administration, at least for the beginning, unless they decide to change that program through standard legal processes, which can take months, if not years. But they did the whole notice and comment period. They spent a year reviewing the comments. So all of that has a lot of legal heft or weight as a precedent. Additionally, there is a new standard in that regulation that is going to prevent a future Trump administration from implementing an extreme vetting process on many work visa statuses, so that extensions will be given deference if most of the factors regarding the job have remained the same. So that's going to be really beneficial for employers and give employees peace of mind. There's also a change, and we'll probably have another webinar about this at some point, but something we've been doing for years, which is getting H-1Bs for people who are the majority owners of their companies, including startup founders. Those H-1Bs are expressly authorized by regulation now. They were already authorized by law before. That's how we did it. But one change is now that for majority owners, their initial H-1Bs at a new startup will be 2 18-month increments instead of 1 36-month increment. And that's due to the high amount of turnover for H-1B for startups, because so many startups don't make it beyond 18 months. So the government will want to check that the company is still doing business. So all of that just happened in the last 24 hours. But that being said, on the campaign trail, there was a lot of rhetoric about H-1Bs. So we will see. We will see how that scrutiny plays out, and if the administration will continue to try to implement what they said in a lot of campaign rhetoric, and fight those changes. If there will be legal battles about that, there could be, and how that's all going to play out. But this administration tried very hard to cement those changes so that hopefully there will be less changes possible to them. Okay. Additionally, there is another interesting change for H-1Bs that might come about in the next couple years. In the H-1B modernization rule, the government declined to create new regulations for the lottery, stating that the technological changes they had made in the last years had worked sufficiently and that they did not need to extend the rulemaking to the H-1B process itself for how H-1Bs are allocated. But something that the Trump 2.0 administration could resuscitate from Trump 1.0 is this regulation that fizzled out, which was to change the H-1B lottery to a wage-based selection from highest salary to lowest salary. And I don't remember the details if it was based on like wage level 4 gets H-1Bs first, or if it's like anybody over 300,000 gets H-1Bs first. I don't remember the exact details, but that's something they could do, but it's not, there is not enough time for it to change this year's lottery. If they rushed it, maybe it could change next year's lottery. But at the present moment, I don't see any reason why this year's lottery wouldn't continue as planned with just a random allocation the way it has been. There have been other changes to J1s over the years. STEM OPT degrees could change again. So that is something to pay attention to. All this stuff we're going to be announcing if and when it does happen. So if you subscribe to our newsletter, my podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and our social media, mostly LinkedIn, Twitter, for Alcorn immigration law, that's where we always update you on any possible changes. Okay, so more of these policy shifts. So we talked about the H-1B. There might be this increased focus on higher skilled workers. The wage-based selection might come back. Maybe we'll see changes to the H-1B duration, allowing for longer stays. That would be cool. But on the other hand, there might be cuts to the H-4 EAD program. That would also take a regulatory process, which would take some time. I would love something that I don't know if it would happen, but it was something that President Trump talked about when he was on the All In podcast, and then he mentioned about how every person who goes to community college in the United States should be able to get a green card stapled to their passport. So that would be amazing if that happened. That would definitely take a new statute passed by Congress. It could be used as some bargaining chip and some dreamer type of negotiation, but it could potentially extend beyond to people who have been maintaining status legally. So that would be incredible if it happens. When President Trump was interviewed on NBC a couple weeks ago, he also said something about helping dreamers. But who knows? Because as it stands, plans are in place to affect mass deportation of undocumented people, which is probably going to start taking effect at the beginning of the administration, and nobody knows exactly the scope of that. It doesn't seem financially or physically possible to potentially deport 10 to 20 million plus people in 4 years. We don't have the infrastructure for that. The system is so backlogged right now. But that's obviously something that's top of mind for a whole lot of people that we're tracking as well. Okay. When it comes to expanding pathways, in addition to this, staple the green card concept, another area that might might see change potentially is when it comes to tech and immigration. And what this would look like exactly, I don't know, because we have this is where we have two different factions within the Republican Party and the administration, right? So there's the Trump 1.0 old guard, right? That's more nativist and xenophobic, that caused a lot of the changes in the first Trump administration, like the Muslim ban. But now we have new people involved in the Republican Party who were Democrats before, right? So Elon, Vivek, David Sachs, JD Vance went from VC to VP, so he definitely understands tech and startups and immigrant entrepreneurship. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, both obviously brilliant CEOs. They are taking over something new called Doge, which I'm sure you've all heard about, Department of Government Efficiency. It's a new cabinet that's based on a meme coin, but it's going to potentially look at massive budget cuts to lots of departmental agencies. And Elon tweeted about a week and a half ago in response to an AI founder's post, like, don't worry, we're going to fix high-skilled immigration for you, something like that. So that would be amazing, right? That would be so incredible. But now, how much power people in a budget cutting advisory role have compared to the people who are literally working for USCIS and Department of Homeland Security, like, that has to play out. We don't know what that's going to look like. But when I read Project 2025, which was the Heritage Foundation report, for our clients, I take solace in the fact that the point, as written in that report of all of this, is basically, let's clean up the country and fix the immigration system so that we can actually recruit and attract and retain the world's best and brightest talent to come here and work on our shores. So at the end of the day, it's not like a total blanket thing against all immigrants. The point is to have a functioning system that can let in the right immigrants, and according to those measures, the right immigrants would be the high-skilled, brilliant immigrants who follow the rules, work hard, pay their taxes, do everything right, create jobs, are entrepreneurs, invent things. So at the end of the day, there might be a lot of chaos in the coming months and years, but the objectives and the incentives are aligned to still have high-skilled immigration pathways in the country. So as we look ahead, there's other trends that also affect the immigration landscape. So I'll talk about this for just a couple more minutes, and then I'll start getting to the questions. And I see there's already several, so that's wonderful. But I've got a few more slides, and then we'll get to the questions. So we have seen the rise of remote work. Remote work is still working for immigration, so you can still get visas and green cards for people who work from home, and for remote teams, and for early stage companies. So that's still viable. The CHIPS Act is also very interesting. It will cause more demand, 19% increase in demand for engineering roles potentially in the country. It really needs an immigration component to be able to thrive. So this is potentially a new statute that could be passed by Congress that could involve immigration. And we need policy responses for a lot of these issues. We need more high-skilled, specialized visa pathways. We need a startup visa. I had a really interesting podcast with somebody from the Economic Immigration Group about the Heartland visa concept, which I think would be incredible. So we definitely need more changes to attract and retain the world's best and brightest people. Even simply making the F1 a dual intent visa would go such a long way to helping. And as the country, looks ahead, there are all of these policy considerations to weigh. How do we balance national security with skilled worker needs? How do we protect American workers and create innovation and create jobs with international workers? How much compliance do we want to have? How do we enforce this system? How do we fund this system? So these are some of the common refrains that just happen always about this system. But obviously, with more immigration, we grow GDP, we become more innovative, we become more competitive. We have decreasing birth rates and an aging population. So if we want to have workforce growth and economic vitality, immigration becomes essential. And we want to continue to be the leaders in innovation and research and critical and emerging technologies. So as we look ahead and prepare for 2025 and beyond, we definitely urge you to effectively utilize existing opportunities. I started this firm in the first Trump administration. Back then, startup founders didn't know that they had any immigration options. And so over the last decade, we've made it abundantly clear that America welcomes entrepreneurs, and there's a variety of ways to effectuate that. And even like the H-1B regulation today, recognizing immigrant entrepreneurs, that's because of a lot of work that we've done behind the scenes, trying to lay those foundations for people. So different techniques and tools to consider looking ahead. If you have a company, place folks in the H-1B lottery. Remember, one person, one chance. So keep that in mind. US companies founded by foreign founders can have the companies put the foreign founders in the H-1B lottery. You don't have to be in the United States. And even if you own 100% of your company, you can still put yourself in the H-1B lottery through your company. If you have any existing options, I would recommend starting them sooner rather than later. I don't know that anything dramatic will change with how USCIS processes cases on January 20th. But I do think the longer somebody waits, just the more potential for randomness and chaos and changes can happen. So if you are considering filing something sometime in 2025, try to do it on the earlier side if possible. For example, the H-1B wages always get reassessed in June or July. So if you can file an extension in the first half of the year, you're allowed to file it more than 6 months ahead of time. So that might help potentially save money for the company. And it's really just important to stay on top of everybody's deadlines, your own especially, your extensions, your renewals, any travel needs when your visas expire. And if you're at a company, to be watching that for your entire employee pool so that you can keep an eye on everybody and help keep everybody safe. And as mentioned, we will be publishing changes in our newsletter and on social media. We do continue to offer a variety of immigration solutions to help people through these options. My online class, Alcorn Academy, is available on our website. It's a 15-module online class I recorded where we look through a deep dive of O1A, EB1A, and EB2 NIW requests for evidence and policy requirements for how to become qualified for a strong petition, regardless of what field you are in. And we've helped folks from all sorts of fields. The latest one where people are surprised is cybersecurity. But yes, cybersecurity professionals can get EB1As and O1As. I'm trying an O1 for a salesperson right now. So there's no limit on what business fields can qualify. Additionally, we continue to offer O1 visas through an agent. And so that that helps you have multiple streams of income when you're on an H-1B. And it helps you, or excuse me, on an O1, and it helps you work in a variety of companies or on a variety of projects that can change. We continue to offer the H-1B for founders, both transfers and the lottery. EB2 NIWs can help you get a priority date. The EB1A is the fastest green card pathway for those who qualify. And there's always more solutions on the way. And I'm constantly reevaluating how we can use the legal mechanisms at hand and any new changes to help our clients as well. You're welcome to reach out to us for a consultation. We'll send you a questionnaire, and it will involve questions like this where you check the boxes. We try to keep it as simple as possible, but this helps us be better able to support you when we have a consultation. Now I'm going to be going into the Q&A section of our discussion. But while I do, oh, there's my book. Yeah, this QR code, let me just double check this. This QR code is to schedule a consultation with us. So you're welcome to click on that. I'm just checking with my phone right now. I should have checked that before. It's loading. Anyway, I'll leave this slide up while I go through the questions. Okay, so what does the future of immigration in 2025 look like? I'm tired thinking about it. It's been a series of sprints that have turned into a series of marathons and now an Ironman. But it's going to be challenging. It's going to be chaotic. There's going to be changes. Probably there's going to be less changes based on tweets and more changes based on legal counsel in Trump 2.0 than Trump 1.0. Well, we do expect a lot of changes, and we don't know exactly what they're going to be. And a lot of it's going to have to do with probably national security and removal. So not all of that will affect this population, but just be proactive, take care of your stuff early, add in extra buffers of time. Just take that mentality as you go through the next 4 years. What's the outlook for the EB1 and O1 types of visas under the new administration? My O1 petition got delayed to the end of January of 2025. Is it safe to travel for H1 or O1 visa holders in 2025? Great question. I know that we're trying to file as many cases as humanly possible for all of our clients this month and into the beginning of January. We can't meet that time frame for new clients, but we do still encourage people to hire us for cases to be filed in Q1. If a petition got delayed, I don't exactly know what that means, but if you have a valid H-1B or O-1 visa in your passport, you should still be able to travel. There is a possibility of a new travel ban coming into effect. And you could look at the list of countries that got affected by what was dubbed the Muslim ban in the past. That went through several Supreme Court cases and different variations. It's also possible that new countries could get added to the list, even countries that don't have any Muslim populations, just based on national security. So some universities, like University of Southern California, are advising their entire student bodies to be physically present in the United States before the start of classes. I believe their term begins on January 15th. So if you're from the UK and you have a valid O1 visa in your passport and you never took a trip to go skiing in Iran or something, you're probably going to be fine to travel, but it might be prudent to just plan your travel for early January and then chill here for a few months in the States and then see how things go and reassess at a future time. What changes should I expect with the approved I-140 for the EB1A and currently waiting for the priority date? Well, congratulations on getting your EB1A approved. The priority date system should not dramatically change. That is very entrenched. If there is higher scrutiny on I-485s, we might see that that process will slow down, and that could involve things like requiring green card interviews for everybody again, like they did in the Trump 1.0 administration. So processing times could increase. That could also delay when you get your work permit and your advanced parole, which is called your combo card. So in Trump 1.0, I would advise everybody to maintain their valid H1 or O1 or whatever non-immigrant status in parallel with their I-485. If there's a glitch or a problem with your I-485, you could potentially refile a new I-485, but only if you're still maintaining status. So a lot of people have gone from like 2012 or 2014, there was a period where the priority dates briefly became current. And a lot of people are still relying only on their combo cards from their pending I-485s and EB2 from that time frame. So, but I would say, and that's probably okay, but if you can be proactive and maintain like your valid H-1B in parallel, I think that would be prudent out of an abundance of caution. Will there be changes to the EB2 or EB1 requirements or timeline for Indian nationals? That's interesting. I don't think the timeline will change. There's still premium processing. The government does have the authority to temporarily shut down the H-1B, the premium processing program, which they did for H-1Bs after a couple of lotteries in the Trump 1.0 administration. So theoretically, that's an option. I don't know why they would do it because it's a big moneymaker and it funds USCIS in a lot of ways. So I think premium processing will continue to be available. In terms of the requirements, I haven't seen any chatter about the requirements changing. I don't think it's a high priority. They could change, but I think that folks who are working on changes would sooner focus on deportation than try to restrict the best and brightest people from coming here, which Republicans still believe is a good thing for the country. What does the future look like for H-4 dependents with EADs? I don't know. There might be regulatory changes to sunset the H-4 EAD program. It is completely possible, just like DACA might not make it through the Supreme Court. So those programs with work permits might come to an end. So things to consider if you're on an H-4 with an EAD. Can you qualify for an O-1 visa? Can you become an entrepreneur and create a company that can put you in the H-1B lottery? Do you want to get an H-1B that is cap exempt without the H-1B lottery? There are a variety of ways for skilled professionals to exit from the H-4 EAD if necessary and continue to be able to work. Some of them take planning and preparation. So knowing about those options and evaluating your interests and your qualifications for them is a good way to be proactive and prudent moving forward. The next question is, if I apply for an EB1 via consular processing and use this evidence of your performance in a leading or critical role in a distinguished organization, do I need to ensure that I don't switch jobs until the CP interview or when I enter the US for the initial landing, or is it enough to be with that company until the initial green card application is approved? Great question. So the petitioner on an EB1 is different from the evidence of performance of a leading or critical role criterion in the argument. So the main thing, let's say you used a company and you want to quit your job, but you self-petitioned. Okay, if you self-petitioned and then you said that your current job is a leading and critical role, probably you can quit, but you probably need to keep working in your field. even if you're self-employed. But if you're company sponsored, then you probably ought to stay in the role until your I-485 is approved and beyond even. In the Trump 1.0 administration, I used to tell people that it's probably best to stay in the job that you got an adjustment of status approved through for a good year after you get your green card, to show that it was a good faith offer of employment and a bona fide job offer. For EB-1A and O-1, I think we've been covering that a lot in the questions. If there's more specific questions, you can add them to the Q&A right now. I have a few more minutes, so I'll try to answer more. Oh, thank you. Hi, Sophie. I'm working with Alcorn right now on the legal launch program and loved reading your book. Thank you so much. I'll put the book slide up actually, and there's our contact information, but the book's on Amazon and Audible, and it has chapters for everybody. So definitely check that out. Okay. Somebody's currently in the US with a B1, B2 visa. Their company just got incorporated as a C Corp. Congratulations. They own 25% of the shares and their goal is to get an O1A. Do they need to file for a status change or apply for a new visa? And if they file for a status change while in the US, does that mean that they're stuck here until their case is under review? Yeah, you can do this two different ways when you're qualified for an O1. If you file for a change of status, then you ought to stay in the US until it's approved. And if you use premium processing, that can take 15 business days, roughly 3 weeks to get the decision. After that, you can schedule a visa stamping appointment and leave and get your visa and come back in on O1, and then you can travel freely on your visa. Alternatively, if you don't want to wait around for them to make a decision, you could just leave and then we can set up your O1 for consular processing so that it only gets activated after you get the visa from abroad. What are the chances for an AI specialist to be accepted for a national interest waiver without a specific job offer? And what changes do you expect from the Trump administration in this field? Can you talk about wait times? You know, the EB-2 has been pretty erratic this past year. The RFE rate has increased. The number of denials across the country has increased. The number of appeals across, it's the most appealed case type in the country right now by like six times, 6 to 10 times the number of appeals for EB-2 NIWs in the country compared to other case types. It has to be very, very specific what you are going to do in the future. The Biden people stopped following the AI executive order, but it could be that Trump will create a new executive order on AI, and that will refocus the EB-2 NIW program and make it easier for you in the future potentially. So I would say, you know, you can reach out to us anytime for an assessment. You can do the legal launch program with us. We'll help you figure out if you need more evidence while we're waiting for more policy clarity to happen. Is it possible to transfer to an O1 visa as a founder at a tech company from their current STEM OPT status in healthcare? Yeah, absolutely. We do it all the time. Reach out to us. Is there any guidance on expired F1 visa during OPT? Any way to extend the visa to travel back home? You'd have to do a new F1 visa stamping in your home country. And the farther along you are in your 3 years of OPT and STEM OPT, I think the harder it is to get that visa stamp extended. In Trump 1.0, I had 2 people who I met in 4 years who were denied an F1 on STEM OPT because at the visa stamping interview, the State Department officer said, I don't believe you're going to stay there temporarily. So it might be prudent to get a different type of visa. Can visa overhauls be overturned by the new administration? Yeah, but it depends on which type, and the H-1B regulation I talked about earlier would be hard to change. It would take many months. What's the minimum equity in the company required, and does this company need to be funded? It depends on what type of visa you're looking at, but we've helped founders with 1% of equity to 100% of equity. We've helped people with no funding who are just bootstrapping. So it really depends, but don't let money or fundraising be an obstacle to exploring immigration. The latest L1, couple more minutes. The latest L1 visa trends. L1s are working now. They're great. Trump 1.0 had a lot of L1 scrutiny, especially for tiny companies. So, but big companies never had a problem with it. And I haven't heard anything about this program being scrutinized because all of the L1 scrutiny came from like the job shop stuff with H1Bs 8 years ago, and the market's changed. We're out of the ZERP era. It's completely different. So I don't think there's going to be the same emphasis on L1 this time. Can Trump take away the H4 EAD cards that have already been approved and in use through a regulatory process? Yes, but that would take months and you would see it coming. Someone with 20 years of experience in the same domain with a Master's of Science degree from a US university with an EB3 priority date from 2018. What are the potentials of switching to the EB1 category with a few technical paper publications and 1 or 2 patents? Yeah, absolutely. Please reach out to us. We would love to offer you a consultation because I see arguments for EB1A for original contributions, leading in critical role, high salary. There might be media coverage about the work you did at your company. You have authorship. So yeah, that's like several criteria right there. Do you anticipate increased scrutiny of H-1B work sites? I think I do. What are your thoughts on physical office requirements, WeWork, remote work, particularly for startups? You just have to really match whatever we put in the H-1B. So in Trump 1.0, when there were a lot of site visits, I would tell people to get a dedicated office within a WeWork instead of a random desk so that you could have a sign on your door and desks and computers in case anybody ever came to investigate. And we would need pictures sometimes to send to the government as well. Immigration pathways for early stage founders who haven't raised funding yet, since investors expect founders to be full-time. Cap exempt H-1B, H-1B without the lottery, O-1 visa, none of these require funding. Any impacts on L1Bs? Potentially same as L1As, as I just talked about. H-1B founders. If we receive part-time H-1B for the company, which the H-1B holder founded, and later if we want to convert it to a full-time H-1B, do we need to apply again through the petition? Not necessarily. We try to give you the benefit of having ranges so that we don't have to amend the H-1B petition every time you want to make a job change. So potentially we could put a range of hours from 20 to 40 hours a week on your H-1B to prevent the need for an amendment when you're ready to go full-time. How much investment would a company require if I decide to found a company for the H-1B founder route? Zero investment. You might need some savings. The company might need some money in the bank account or LOIs, letters of intent from potential customers. There's different ways to meet the H-1B salary requirements, but at the end of the day, when the H-1B gets approved, your company has to put the person on payroll and pay them the prevailing wage per the H-1B program guidelines. So we have to make sure you have enough money to pay the prevailing wage for the period we're requesting. And so I've gotten H-1Bs approved for people with like $8,000 in their bank account, but they had other good things. Other people had tens of thousands of dollars. There's different ways to do it. What is the current timeline for adjustment of status? We filed in January this year and we're still waiting. I haven't checked lately, but I believe it's anywhere from 8 to 16 months, something like that. So, okay. Great. Well, thank you everybody so much. Thank you for staying with me. Oh, all the webinar chat. I didn't even notice that. Okay. I have another thing I got to run to. If your questions didn't get answered, or if you have private questions, reach out to us, hello@alcorn.law. We would be so happy to help you. It is my goal and my mission to pave the way for the world's brilliant people to live and create freely and make the world a better place through the technologies of tomorrow that you all are creating. So have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining me. Be in touch. Talk soon. Bye.